Hey guys, hope you're all doing well. So I wanted to talk about self-doubt and imposter syndrome. So I do get back question a lot on Instagram. How do you deal with it? Have you ever dealt with it? What are your top tricks? And I think some people think I've never dealt with imposter syndrome just because I don't really talk about it that much. But I think when you've gone through this medical journey, there are times where you will start doubting your capabilities, and I think it's more common than you think. So the reason why I didn't share it on Instagram, because I think my journey to become a confident physician was quite long. So I thought it'd be better to discuss it as a story time, because I'm going to be talking about when did I notice that I have imposter syndrome, when did I suddenly become confident, and my journey to becoming a confident physician. So let's go back to the start. And during medical school, I was a really strong student. I always had great grades, and I was doing really well in my clinicals. I even was nominated for distinction in 2 of our rotations. And so I knew I was a good student. I always knew that if I did put in the work, that I will see the result. And I know that's not always the case, but that's what worked for me, basically. However, that did not reflect on rotations. Like when I was rounding with attendings, I was that student who was always too shy to speak up, always too shy to answer. And even though I knew the answer for a lot of her questions, unless I was asked directly, I wouldn't know how to answer it. Or sometimes I would stumble on my answers, even if they do ask the question directly to me. So I did know that even though my grades were high, I wasn't really that confident when it came to rounds. And during that time, I slowly tried to become more confident. I always tried to convince myself to speak up when I knew the answer, and I slowly got better at it. But one thing that always stuck out to me was something my clinical dean told me. And I was actually studying in front of our classroom, and he was just walking in the hallway. He saw me reading, and we had this discussion. I don't really remember what it was about, but something I said made him tell me, "You're a lot smarter than you think you are, and that's what your problem is. You don't know how smart you are. Always read, keep reading, keep doing what you're doing. You're doing amazing. But always remember that you're very smart, and stop being so shy about that." And that kind of stuck with me. It's kind of different. It's kind of different when you know that you have the ability to be this great student or this great physician, and when someone who's your mentor in a way kind of says that. So that was the first time where I had this little boost of confidence. Medical school is over. Intern year in Dubai that had to be done is over as well, and I get accepted and I come to the US. And that's when I started my intern year in the US. And that's where everything kind of went downhill, literally. I think that's when I really suffered from imposter syndrome. I felt like for the majority of my intern year, I was playing catch up. A lot of the people who were my co-residents, first of all, everyone was 3 to 4 years older than me. So there was always this age gap. A lot of people had experiences from before where they either did mission trips or they were attendings in their own countries if they were IMGs. And a lot of people, this wasn't their first job, I guess. So during my intern year, I really did struggle, especially the first 6 months. I had moved from Dubai. I did very bad in my in-training exam as well. That's the first exam you do during intern year to assess what level you are at. I didn't really do as good as I expected, but then again, I didn't really study for that exam, and I kind of just answered to get done with the exam. People initially told me it's not gonna matter, so I kind of like went in, just was answering so I can get out as soon as possible. But come like in reality, my attendings actually looked at my score and thought like I was a weak resident, and they thought like I needed a lot of reading, a lot of teaching, etc. So that really didn't help. And on top of that, most of my rotations, like the co-residents that I was with, like obviously there were some residents that I started with who also this was their first job, but it was that not that many. So, but everyone that I was attached with during our rotations was one of these like IMGs who wasn't attending ever in their own country or something like that. So I always felt like I was playing catch up. Like no matter how much I read, I was still behind. No matter how hard I tried, I was still behind. Even when I was trying super hard, some of the attendings wouldn't I guess notice it, because I'd still hear like them telling me you should be reading more, etc. And yeah, so also a couple of seniors who were pretty mean. Like it didn't really help, you know. So it was pretty rough the first 6 months. I even remember going to my program coordinator once, and I was talking to her and I was telling her how I feel like I couldn't make it. Like I was so scared I was going to be that resident who wasn't going to finish residency. One of those stories that you read where someone drops out, I was so worried that's going to be me. So I went to her complaining, and she tells me, you have no idea how many people throughout the years have come to her complaining saying the same thing, and how all of these people have graduated and are attendings or are doing amazing in their careers. So that kind of helped about time, and after about 6 months, I kind of got a huge confidence boost because it was 6 months. I already got adapted to the situation, everything was okay, and I was able to start reading more. I was reading almost every day. I don't remember a time where I left the hospital and didn't go home to read for a big majority of my second chunk of my intern year. And yeah, so I thought I was doing really good. Then the second year comes along, and my first rotation was an elective. So I was doing, I think, rheumatology, and that was a pretty easy elective. Like, you don't really have a senior role, I guess. You're just following a rheumatology attending, and that's really about it. But then my second rotation was the medical ICU. So in my second year, my program decided to change their system. Initially, our ICU rotation was basically shifts, so it was 12-hour shifts. They decided, let's go back to the 24-hour system. So that meant the ICU resident would be on call from 7 in the morning till 7 in the morning the next day. And on top of that, there's 4 additional hours that are added for sign out. So technically, it was around 28 hours. And they thought it would be okay for us to be on call every 4th day, or every 3rd day, I think. I really can't remember that. On top of that, so we always had 2 people on call, but on top of that, instead of having 2 people on call, we're gonna only make 1 person on call. Basically 1 resident managing the entire ICU and the entire CCU. There was no fellows, and there was no in-house attendings. Like, we had attendings available if we had any questions, and they'd come in, but it was like an on-home, it wasn't an in-house situation. They were on call from home. So every time you get an admission, you do call the attending and so on, but if you have an emergency, you call the attending and they'll come in. But other than that, there was no one in-house to help you. So we're like, okay, we'll see how it goes. And our program was very honest with us from the beginning. But like, we're very open to feedback and let us know how it goes. First month, they didn't hear any complaints. Like, people found it difficult, but no complaints, because the majority of the seniors at that time. It was people who were, like I said, were attendings in their home countries, so they were pretty confident with their management. And then I come along. But then like the second month came along, and I was one of the residents, was one of the seniors who had to take that responsibility of being the only person in the ICU. Of course, we never let an intern manage the ICU. It was always the senior. So on top of that, if you're on call, you also have to help the cardiology intern. We also had a CCU rotation, and there was a cardiology intern on call, so I'm basically responsible for everything he does as well. So first call goes okay, second call goes okay, and then my third call hits, and it was the worst call of my entire life. But it was also good, I guess, because it made me a much more confident physician in it, like eventually, but it wasn't fun going through it. So my third call comes around and everything's fine. I come in the morning, finish my shift, like do my shift till like 6 p.m. and that's when everyone leaves. 6 p.m. they give me sign out and everyone in the ICU leaves. The attending, the other residents, the interns, everyone's gone for the day, and basically it's just me. And it was a rough night, I guess, evening, night, whatever, because most of the ICU beds were empty at that time. So I did get 7 admissions, like from 6 p.m. until 12 in the morning. I got 7 admissions back to back. I had to do all the admissions by myself. And eventually I called the ICU attending and gave him sign out, and we discussed my management. Then at around 1 in the morning, I get called by one of the CCU nurses, and I rush there because the patient needed pressors at that point, and they needed a central line. At that point, I had seen central lines done. I was guided through one once, but I'd never done one solo. So that was the first time I did one solo. Not really an ideal situation. No pressure. I actually called a lot of, I called surgery, I called anesthesia, nobody was coming to put it in, so I had to put it in. And the nurse at that night was really helpful. Like, he held my SpectraLink, which is the phone that I have, where the nurses call me through, and he would answer my phone calls and tell them that I was doing a procedure. I got that done, dragged myself back to the ICU, start responding to all my SpectraLink calls, and yeah, that's when one of the ICU nurses tells me, hey, the patient who came up from the emergency department with the arterial line, that blew. So now we need a new arterial line. So I go in, start putting it, also I've never done an arterial line before, okay? So I guide wire in, I'm about to complete that line, and that's when I hear code blue, 3 beds down. Yeah. Man, when I tell you it was a bad night, like I can't even, okay? I pull out the guide wire, the ICU nurse holds it, because I looked at her freaked out, she's like, go, and I rushed to the code and start running it. And it was one of the worst codes in my life. Like, the patient was in DIC, family very insistent that he remains full code. So every time we were doing chest compressions, you could see blood just coming out of everywhere, basically. And yeah, we did that for 40 minutes. Unfortunately, the patient did expire, and that was done. Dragged my body down to get that arterial line put in. That was also great success. I'm super happy about that. That was done. And by that time, it was around 2 something in the morning. After that, I'm about to leave the ICU to head to my call room, rest for a little bit. I thought it'd be a good time. Like, things already, like a lot of things happened already, right? No way it's gonna get worse. But then suddenly the cardiology intern comes running to me and he's like, they just called me. There's an SVT in room whatever, okay? Like 607, and I rush there with him. So we get that under control. The patient's no longer in SVT, very normal sinus rhythm. And then I have to document a note saying that we did whatever we did, and that was okay. By that time, it's almost 4 a.m. and I get called because another patient is crashing, and that's when I had to do another central line. So I did 2 central lines and 1 arterial line during that call, okay? Thank God, really, that I didn't have any more admissions, because I think I would have just died. So I did that central line, and by that time, I just dragged myself to the call room. It was around 5 in the morning at that point. And I closed the call room and I started crying because I was just so exhausted. I've never understood when people cry from exhaustion, but that was when like it hit me, like what people feel. Like I felt so defeated, like so exhausted. I was just like, my body is about to shut down. I'm dead. And that's when my husband calls me, because he had just woken up and he was about to come into work, so he wanted to check in on me. And he's like, hey, how was your call? And I tell him what's going on, what happened, and how exhausted I am. And he could hear that I was crying. So at that point, like, he told me, you need to realize you're 25 and you're running an ICU. I don't know anyone else who could do that. Be proud of what you did tonight. And honestly, that was like the confidence boost that I needed, and that is what pushed me through the next few hours. And like 6 in the morning, before people came in, we had another code. We were able to bring that patient back. And then I left at 11 in the morning because the ICU attending took forever to discuss our patients. So yeah, that night from hell is what made me become a confident physician, really, because it made me realize, like, all this training, all this knowledge that you have, when the time comes, even though you might feel like you know nothing, when the time comes, it will all like come to the surface. Even if it's the back of your mind, it will all just like resurface. And no matter what I'm able to do, I'm always able to take care of patients. It was such an eye-opening experience. Like, I know it sounds horrific, right? But at the same time, I needed that night. Like, it kind of made me realize what I'm capable of. And till this day, like, I'm actually super proud of myself of what I was able to accomplish that night. And from that day, I realized, like, yeah, whatever I'm doing was working. Keep reading, keep studying, keep asking questions, and speak up more. And it actually made me speak up more, because I felt like, hey, yeah, I do have information, like knowledge. Because I became such a confident, stronger resident because of that. A physician overall, actually. So it made me realize that everything that I was doing was beneficial. Keep reading, keep asking questions. Eventually, all this knowledge that you acquire will be beneficial, will actually have an impact on your confidence and your management. Back to that story, we all complained after that month was over, and they actually changed it, so that's no longer the situation, and that's a good thing. Like, I was super happy our program listened to us, but we told them this was not sustainable. Like, you can't do that. So that's no longer the case now, but it was pretty horrific at that time. So when it comes to like imposter syndrome, when it comes to confidence, I don't think it just happens overnight. Like, I think like everybody's on a journey, and there will be moments in this journey where you get this aha moment, which is what I had during that night. And that moment is when you kind of gain that confidence. I know a lot of people are going to tell you to work on it, and I did. Like I said, I tried to convince myself to speak up. I tried to convince myself that I had that knowledge. Or I was going to be a great doctor, but no matter what, it didn't sink in until that night. And yeah, that's really my story to becoming a confident physician, I guess. I did have a couple of interns like during my second year and during my third year always come to me and tell me, how are you so confident? Or, we don't think like by the end of this like residency we'll be as strong as you are, etc. And I always told people like how bad it was for me during intern year, like how I felt, like how I was struggling, or how horrible or how I thought I was never gonna make it to second year, etc. And people are usually shocked, but that's really the truth. And I think it's quite more common than you think. So yeah. So I hope you guys enjoyed the story. I hope it might relate, you might find it relatable, or it might help you with your confidence journey. But like I said, it's a journey, okay? So be easy on yourself, okay? Okay guys, I hope you liked this video. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!